So, Shane, tell me what year this is. The number one movie at the box office is Toy Story. Okay. Two of Disney's
2001.
two of Disney's other big movies are Aladdin and The Lion King that are going to be released. Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman are now in creative positions, and wrestling will be launching on TNT this fall. So I'm going to ask you, what year is this currently?
2020, I believe. Yeah, we're talking about right now.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that what's old is new, and what works ends up coming back in the life cycle, especially in the wrestling business. As this crazy announcement came out of the blue, of course, it was broken by Sports Illustrated now because they're looped into everything WWE. But Paul Heyman being assigned to Monday Night Raw as the executive director, and then Eric Bischoff being assigned to SmackDown as the executive director. A shocking move, so to speak, just because anything of this magnitude with AEW kind of looming in the background is always going to be big news. But what's your take on this assignment now for two of these guys that ran directly against Vince McMahon for a good almost 5, 6, 7 years?
Yeah, well, the first thing that popped into my head as I read that was this is the first major overt move I've seen the WWE and Vince McMahon make in relation to the precipitous ratings drop, the drop that's been going on for nearly 15 years now. Throughout that time, he's stayed the course, and which was always befuddling to me. So just the announcement of the appointment of Bischoff to SmackDown and Paul to Raw, I think is huge because of that. And it makes, like we talked about before we got in the air, it makes perfect sense, Bischoff being with SmackDown and liaising with Fox, because he's got the experience of having done that, right? Interacted and liaised with the Fox, the Turner executives, etc. So it's a perfect position for him. Paul being in charge of Raw, same thing. Paul's big strength is character development, writing great storylines, and it's going to be very interesting to watch and see now. First of all, what they do with each individual brand, each of them, and how well will they play together? Because there's no secret those two guys don't really get along that well.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to play together now in this more important role. Now, when Bischoff was brought in as a talent in 2002, Paul was working backstage in the creative department and was writing SmackDown at one point. So, yes, they would have had interaction, but they wouldn't have had interaction to the point where they're going to be having to have a lot of conference calls together, a lot of meetings together. This is a very interesting mix that could be really combustible if you think about it. But yeah, this is a sense of desperation in the move. Absolutely. Should this have been made 5 years ago? Probably. But if you look at the landscape in the last year, he's brought back, and we're talking Vince McMahon's brought back Bruce Pritchard to either be the assistant to creative or he's Vince McMahon's right-hand man again. He's brought in Jeff Jarrett, who obviously launched TNA and was a giant influencer in terms of business dealings in the early to mid-2000s. And now he's got Eric Bischoff in an executive role. He's got Paul Heyman in an executive role. Who's next? Who else is left? I joked. I said, is Bill Watts going to be the guy who's going to be running, the gorilla position next? Like, it's a sense of desperation. Yeah, but I mean, like, why did it take so long to make these moves?
Yeah, that's like how many times have you and I spoken, and how many times have I spoken about this on interviews and with fans? When any business, let's take Microsoft, big companies, conglomerates. I can't imagine them allowing their industry to drop half a percentage point before CEOs' heads would be rolling and departmental heads would be rolling. We've seen this precipitous drop. We can go to the argument and get into the weeds about whether or not this is industry-wide. Is it genre-wide, entertainment genre? And there is some validity to that. But there's no way to slice it other than to say the WWE has reigned over a precipitous drop in their viewership and their ratings. When they announced the signing of the $5 billion deals with Fox and NBC Universal, I said, hats off to Vince that he's been able to sell that product for $5 billion because, and again, I want to underscore, like I always do anytime we talk about this kind of stuff, I'm not pointing the finger at the kids or the talent. They're doing what's being told to them to do. But, everybody that's writing that stuff and anybody that's making the decisions as to what's making air and what direction they're going, the utter lack of character development, the utter lack of anybody like Steve Austin used to say, Vince McMahon is strapping a rocket to anybody's ass. It's befuddled me for 13, 14, 15 years as things are going this way in the WWE. They just stayed the course, made no changes, just kept putting the same kind of stuff out over and over again, occasionally a new face that they would throw in there, but never strapped the rocket to their ass. It's perplexing, and it still is now. These are big moves, I think, and I might say probably in the right direction, but it's going to remain to be seen. Will Paul's strengths as a booker that he was in ECW, will that translate well in 2019, especially to a locker room that doesn't have the experiential base to capitalize on it? And will Bischoff's on his end, will his experiences be as practical today as they were back then? So I mean, there's still, definitely a step in the right direction, but still a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, and I'm almost more worried on paper about Eric Bischoff than I am Paul Heyman, just because, I mean, do we remember how Eric Bischoff left TNA? Do we recall the lawsuit, that he had with TNA and then just the animosity with Dixie Carter and, just how that went down, which I mean, I know that's not a very difficult thing to do, have animosity with Dixie Carter on the way out.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm trying to say? I mean, he has I think it might even still be in litigation at some part. But I mean, he, had a really big legal issue with TNA. And that was also while he was in this kind of executive producer role. So I get more worried about having Eric Bischoff in the fray. And it's a wise move by Vince to have Bischoff, creatively or executive position on your team versus the other team.
Sure.
But yeah, on pay, I don't know why. I just think that they know Heyman a lot more in that kind of a supervisory role than they do Bischoff.
Oh, no question about it. And the thing that goes for both of them, will the control freak, the megalomaniac named Vince McMahon, give them the real freedom that they need, that they require to get the company back being spoken again? Like I said before we went on the air, WWE, and I'm talking to the fans, they've now been tagged with something that no entertainment genre company wants to be tagged with: uncool. And when you talk to the fans and you see that playing out, when we see the numbers that they just had this past weekend, record historic low, the lowest in the company's history, pay-per-view buy rate. Things are not well in WWE land. And, is Vince McMahon, a la ripping the lineup, ripping it up, 15, 20 minutes before airtime, because, the same lineup that he oversaw all week long, is he going to do the same type of things to Bischoff and Paul? And if he does, how's that going to play on the other end? It's, there was ever a time to be a fly on the wall. It's coming right now.